Alright guys, this is Chatterbox Reviews, coming to you guys with a throwback review for the pilot of Breaking Bad. Alright, so this will be the first review in this series that I've really wanted to start for a couple years now. This is one I've just been really interested in, and I haven't seen a lot of other people do this before. I'm sure there's, I'm sure there is lots of things out there, looking at pilots of TV shows like this and doing throwback reviews. But this series, I want to do something kind of special, at least I think it's special, and looking at the pilots of, some of the greatest shows of all time, shows that are in that kind of, realm, in that kind of, at that level. Right. And ultimately basically comparing them and trying to see at the end of the day, what is kind of the best TV series pilot of all time. So that's kind of what I'm going for here with this series. I know set the bar pretty high here. We're starting off with Breaking Bad at in the first review here. But yeah, so I'm gonna do shows that I have seen, of course, and there are a lot of shows that have some really great pilots that I have seen. Though I will say, a lot of those shows, I haven't watched the pilots for years, so it will be almost like watching it again. But then I also want to do shows that I have not seen, and, have not seen a single episode. Some shows even, like, I haven't seen a single frame or, pictures or anything of this show, just going in blind. So I think it'll be a cool mix of doing both, shows I have seen and shows I have not seen, and kind of throwing them into the mix here and trying to compare, them to one another, of course, and also just sharing kind of my thoughts on the episode as a whole. For shows that I have not seen, is this a show that I really am interested now in watching after seeing this pilot? So all of that stuff. And one of the biggest things to keep in mind is I will only be doing pilots for shows that have already finished airing, no matter how many seasons. So Walking Dead, they're on their 11th season now, but I will not be doing a pilot review for Walking Dead until that show is finished airing, which will actually be later this year in that case. But yeah, so ideally, hopefully, shows that have been off the air for a couple years, right, at least. I want to take a look at those pilots in particular, not the pilots of any shows that are currently ongoing right now. So that's kind of the caveat for this one. But yeah, so I thought I would start off with Breaking Bad for this first review. My favorite show of all time. Just wanted to get that out there off the top here. Favorite show of all time. And to me, I think, I've rewatched the show, I think, twice all the way through. I've watched some episodes more than that. And this was my first time, though, revisiting this pilot in a couple years at least, maybe 3 or 4 even. And so, my kind of memory was that, yeah, this was probably the best pilot of that I've ever seen. I mean, I just thought, obviously it being my favorite show of all time, to go along with that, I thought the pilot was also the best I have seen of all time. And so I thought, what other, show or what other pilot could I start with, than Breaking Bad, and having that in my mind. So, of course, I did rewatch the pilot for this review, because otherwise I would have forgot a lot of it. And so I've rewatched it now. I kind of have my thoughts on it now, and, yeah, really like to get into this one and share my thoughts. But, anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts on the pilot of Breaking Bad, whether you've seen it recently, whether, now you want to get some inspiration, now you want to go back and watch it again, if you haven't seen it in a while. But what were your thoughts of the Breaking Bad pilot? And did you watch it live when it was, I know, probably not a lot of people, but did you watch it live when it was coming out? What did you think of it then? Anyways, love to hear all your guys' thoughts on, and just Breaking Bad as a whole too, of course. But yeah, I'd love to discuss that with you guys, as always. And if you enjoy this review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Would really appreciate that. And definitely stick around, because I'll be doing more of these throwback reviews for tons and tons of pilots, hopefully coming up for all these TV shows. So yeah, really looking forward to this. All right, so first I just want to go off kind of a basic thing. I'm going to say, who's involved basically with the show, what the synopsis is or the basic premise, and then I'll go into my kind of criteria. So I have 4 criteria as of now for this first, episode or first review of the series. So I have the introduction of the characters. So, or just a main character. That's especially the case with this show because it has such a big kind of influential main character at the center, whereas other shows might have an ensemble. So I thought we'll stick to introduction of characters just in general. Next is the introduction of the world or atmosphere, and I think this will apply especially to kind of fantasy shows, sci-fi, anything like that where they're really kind of world building. I think this will apply more to, but certainly it definitely applies to Breaking Bad as well. And tons of other shows like that. And then the hook or the twist, right? Either at the beginning of the episode or at the end of it. How is this hook? Does it work? Does it hook me? Does the twist work on me? That kind of stuff. And then lastly, just the originality or uniqueness of this pilot, of the concept for this show. Does it stand out, right? What makes this pilot special amongst all the other kind of shows that are within its same genre? So all that stuff. And then I'll end off with giving it a rating out of 10. So anyways, with all that being said then, let's get into some of the basics here before we get into diving in and talking about more of the details for this pilot episode. Alright, so this one is obviously directed and written by Vince Gilligan, who also created the show or developed kind of the idea for it. And I think it's just interesting, of course, now seeing how Vince Gilligan is regarded, doing Breaking Bad, doing Better Call Saul now in collaboration with Peter Gould there. And I'm sure we'll get to Better Call Saul's pilot as well, because now that series is actually officially done. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that pretty soon. But yeah, I just think it's kind of, cool to look back and see how he was regarded when the show started, right? Of course, he was a writer on X-Files, wrote quite a few episodes, I think, in the later seasons of that show. But obviously not, definitely not, at the level that he's, regarded as or seen as now. But just, he was, I'm sure a lot of people did know him from X-Files, but, yeah, not that well known. And if you know the kind of backstory of how Breaking Bad got made and how it found itself at AMC, it was because a lot of other places rejected this whole idea. And I'm not sure that was necessarily Vince Gilligan, but it was just the whole idea of having this, Walter White kind of anti-hero, drug dealer and all this, the kind of idea behind it. But, so yeah, it just kind of tells you, how far Vince Gilligan has come to now, being basically like, TV royalty, really, and creating, to a lot of people, one of the best shows of all time. To me, the best show of all time. So crazy stuff, and definitely fully deserved for all the stuff that he's done, like I said, with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And then, of course, you want to go back and talk about his work on the X-Files. Yeah, and even El Camino. I thought El Camino had some amazing moments in that one as well. So this one stars Bryan Cranston, Aaron Paul, Anna Gunn, Dean Norris, and Betsy Brandt. We have R.J. Mitty and, of course, Giancarlo Esposito comes in later, Bob Odenkirk. So, a lot of, high-profile cast members now after the show. But those are kind of just the main players, especially in this pilot episode. It really is those 5 that I named at the beginning there, because we do get kind of a lot of focus on the family here and less about kind of the crime world, where we do, later seasons of the show, obviously. So, basically the basic premise, I'm sure everyone's familiar with it at this point. But it's basically a high school chemistry teacher who turns 50, is diagnosed with terminal cancer, And now he's kind of, breaking bad, as the title says, and is deciding, I'm going to be gone now. I have to make money to leave behind for my family because they are not well off at all. I mean, they live, pretty good. They live okay. But they definitely would not have enough money when he passes because Skylar doesn't even work, right? So it's, basically to leave this money behind for his family. He decides to use his skills, right, of chemistry and cook meth here with his former high school student, in this episode, Jesse Pinkman. So that's kind of the premise we work with here. Of course, there's a lot more at play as the show goes on. But in this pilot episode, I think that's especially kind of a focus of this one. All right. So with all the kind of general stuff out of the way here, let's get to my 4 criteria. So first off is introduction of the characters, or in this case, our main character. I think this is probably the strongest element of this pilot and what makes it one of the best pilots of all time, in my opinion. All of these characters, I really, the first example that comes to mind is like of just showing how well Vince Gilligan does this in introducing his characters. I mean, even just the moment of introducing Marie, who actually doesn't played by Betsy Brandt in this in the series, who actually doesn't play that big of a role in this pilot episode. The introduction of her character is just 2 lines and this small little scene with Skylar, and you just see the dynamic between the sisters there. You see exactly what kind of character Marie is. It's this, her first line is this slight at Skylar, right? I think it's like making fun of her age or her weight or something like that, right? It's just this little slight where, oh, you think sisters, they kind of get along, they say nice things about each other, and Betsy Brandt plays it perfect, of course, as well. But, yeah, it's just these flawless introduction of these characters. Same with the Walter White character. I mean, just the whole episode, really, does such a good job of taking, of course, we know the kind of saying that Vince has made really popular, Mr. Chips to Scarface, throughout the show. But even in this episode, I feel like we almost go from Mr. Chips to Scarface by the end of it. We start off with him, well, obviously the cold open aside, because that's kind of fast forwarding. But where we begin in the actual timeline here, he is this kind of boring chemistry teacher, this, kind of boring home life, Skylar, and then of course Walt Jr., but Skylar's pregnant, so they have the baby on the way, and yeah, it's just starting off with such a boring kind of average character, and by the end of the episode, it's this massive arc that this guy has, but it all makes sense. It is all so grounded, and I think Bryan Cranston just does such a good job of that, in basically portraying that, and then obviously portraying even the whole, cancer diagnosis scene, and him being diagnosed with cancer. He comes home from the doctors, and even in this pilot episode, he still has not even told his wife, right? So it's just these defining things of, okay, you think like a normal husband like that would go home, tell his wife right away, and probably a big emotional moment, but not in this show, and not with this character of Walter White. And it's just such a defining character trait, like I just said it with Marie. It's right away showing you exactly who these characters are, and of course this has a lot of influence on how the rest of it plays out. Even Skylar, I think it's just such a great introduction of her character as well, showing, even I think the first time we see her is when she brings the bacon to Walt, the 50, and she's trying this new veggie bacon, and so even again, just like such a little small detail like that. Instead of just normal bacon, it's veggie bacon, and she's trying to get them on this kind of new trend. And then, of course, you have the character Jesse Pinkman, which is such a great introduction to that character as well. The first scene we see him in, it's him falling out of off the roof, right, after escaping through this window. We have this girl throwing down his clothes. He falls, off this roof in his underwear, and even then we see Walter, Pinkman. It's just like such an iconic introduction to a character like this, where, a lot of other shows, you see some stuff like this with characters, either it's kind of just a boring thing of just, oh, here's this, character, or it's kind of this grand entrance thing where they have, maybe, a sequence of them, entering basically the frame, and then it's like, just kind of this big thing, and it feels almost like they're introducing this character, and trying to make it big. But in this case, with all these characters, it's just such a small, it's these small, minute details that are just thrown in here as they're getting kind of introduced just naturally in these scenes. That it just emphasizes exactly who they are, brings out so many character traits, in just such little time and with such little effort, really, in watching it. So, and then of course Hank too. I mean, like the first scene with him as well, when they're watching the TV. The big scene of, Walter has a heart the size of Wisconsin. And, I don't know. It's just like all these lines, like that line, it's just so specific and so, it just stands out to you so much. And Dean Norris, what an amazing job, capturing exactly who that character is, right off the bat here in this pilot. So yeah, I mean, the introduction of these characters, this is just masterful work, in my opinion. All of these, even Walter Jr., you see that in this episode too. I think they do a great job in introducing him. So, yeah, I mean, this is just, fantastic, fantastic work. To me, probably the best element of this pilot episode, and I think it'll be hard to top what they do here in terms of these characters for any other pilot I see. Maybe Better Call Saul. Well, we'll have to see, but yeah. Fantastic stuff here from Vince Gilligan. Can't say enough about that. So, next is the introduction of the world or atmosphere. So, as I said at the top, I think this one will apply more to kind of the world building, more fantasy type shows. Am I interested in this kind of world that they're introducing me to? But in this case, it almost is this world of Albuquerque and this basically this setting that they're giving us, and just kind of the feel of what this, world is like, what Walter White's world is like, how he sees the world. So that's kind of the angle that I'm going to go in evaluating this type of criteria for this pilot. And yeah, I think this is also a masterful job at this as well. Obviously, the Albuquerque you get, as we go on in the series, you get probably better visuals and a better sense of the environment. But even in this pilot, when they're out cooking the meth in the RV, I mean, some of these visuals are just stunning. And you get the feel of where they are, where this place is, in the Albuquerque desert when they're out there, like I said, cooking with the RV. And then even just the high school, the car wash, just all these scenes, those kind of settings just feel boring, and it's just like him kind of going through the motions. They look like kind of typical high school, a typical kind of car wash. I also feel like as well, it does feel like a lot of these shots are kind of and I'm not sure this is intentional or not, but it does feel like kind of tighter spaces, I would say, with a lot of these shots. Not a lot of huge wide shots used in this pilot, at least in those scenes with the car wash and this high school specifically, I would say, especially that big classroom scene at the very beginning. I feel like there's a kind of more close-up shots just in general in those scenes, and that also kind of brings it kind of closer, tighter together, and you feel kind of trapped along with Walter, in this world, in his world, right, that he has basically, made or led up to, and this is where he is at this point of his life, at age 50 now, right? And, even his home life too, I think, I'm not sure this quite speaks to the atmosphere and that, but even just the home life and developing, that really, like I said, that first scene where Skylar brings him the bacon with the 50 on it, just that conversation alone is just such, it's kind of just this boring, tedious kind of conversation that's kind of playful, though. It's kind of funny. Him and Skylar have some funny stuff with Walter Jr., give him a little bit of shit with the veggie bacon and all that. But it's just kind of this, menial, kind of boring conversation. There's not really any excitement that we see. And even the scene, even I think before the bacon scene, is him, not being able to sleep. He wakes up early, kind of goes into the room, it's dark still, and he's on the little step stool machine there. So it's just, I think it's a really great job at establishing what Walter White's world looks like, and then kind of, almost this parallel of that, and then the Albuquerque desert, and seeing kind of that, and obviously the RV scene with him, driving even in the cold open, where we get that. It's again just kind of establishing this atmosphere of where they are, and of course this setting plays a big part in the show. Especially in these first couple seasons where they're cooking out in the desert in the RV. And that plays a large part in how they're even able to do this, and get away with it. So, really great stuff. And obviously throughout the entire series, but in this pilot as well, the directors make such a good use of these visuals, of these landscapes, that they have at their fingertips. And it's just amazing, just stunning stuff that comes from this show. Okay, so next is the hook or the twist. So, like I said, this is either at the beginning of the episode or at the end. I think some pilots will kind of vary between them. But this one, the hook is at the beginning. Very much at the beginning in this fantastic cold open. Such an iconic opening kind of shot or sequence here with the pants, right, flying down from the sky, and then the RV drives over them. I mean, who would not be interested in just that kind of opening visual alone, with just pants floating down, and all of a sudden this RV just, drives by going, 100 miles an hour, going out of control, on this desert road. And then, of course, you see Walter in the gas mask and his underwear driving. It's just such an intriguing first couple seconds, honestly, of this to get you hooked. And then, of course, how the whole scene plays out. You hear the sirens. He gets the camera out, says he loves his family, right? And puts the camera away, gets his gun out, and he's going to kill himself, right? He's going to shoot himself, and he has the gun up against his head, or I think maybe against his chin there. He's going to pull the trigger, and then he doesn't, right? So then we kind of build more suspense, where the siren's getting closer. He's holding the gun out, right? He's holding the gun out like he's, I guess, going to shoot them, going to shoot the cops when they come. And, we don't know, of course, at that point. Later on, of course, we know it's just the firefighters that come. And that's where we end, is him holding this gun and waiting for the cops to come for him. What an amazing hook to a show. Wow. Like, I don't know anybody who wouldn't be hooked by this cold open alone. Of course, right after the cold open, when we come back from the first commercial break, it does kind of take it down a notch, obviously, and it is kind of a little slower. So I could see people who are really interested in the cold open and then being like, whoa, like what are we doing now? I get that, but I don't know. I just think this hook works perfectly. Such a good hook to get people interested. And the biggest thing about this hook is that it is fully paid off by the end of the episode. Whereas I think in some shows, even I've seen recently in their first episodes, I guess something like Yellow Jackets comes to mind, just off the top of my head here, in showing us a hook or a twist at the very beginning of episode 1, and then not really, I mean, even in that case, they didn't even pay it off for the whole first season, but I'm mainly talking about just not paying it off in that first episode, right? They kind of set this up, it's super intriguing, but you'll have to find out in a few weeks or in a few episodes, right? No, this cold open is paid off by the end of the episode. Vince Gilligan delivers exactly what he promised at the beginning here. And again, I think that just speaks to how well it's done, because yes, the hook works, but it also isn't just kind of cheap to get you, hooked and keep watching the show. It actually fully pays off at the end of the episode, where we come back. Such an amazing shot where they started the barrel of the gun and then, kind of pan up. Yeah, amazing. And then we come back and we kind of resume that scene. Like I said, the firefighters come, and he kind of puts the gun in his, in the back of his underwear and watches them drive by. So yeah, just fantastic stuff all the way around again. I kind of find it hard to believe that we'll have a better hook here in any other pilot, but that's just my thought right now. And then in terms of the originality or uniqueness of this pilot, or basically of the concept that the series is going with. So this one, I don't know, it's a little more kind of difficult. I don't think it's really clear because there's not a lot. I mean, I guess you could say Breaking Bad is a crime genre show. And in that way, I would say it is unique because not a lot of other, crime shows are specifically about, the manufacturing of drugs and meth. It's more about kind of the dealing of it in that kind of world. So I would say it's unique in that way. And then, of course, you can look at this from the whole angle of having an anti-hero like Walter White at the center of the show. Which does stand out, but it's not the most unique thing because, of course, Tony Soprano in The Sopranos, which I'm sure we'll also take a look at, but Tony Soprano was, I think essentially you could say the first anti-hero on TV. So it wouldn't be the first anti-hero, main character driven show, but yeah, I mean, I think that's still original. You still don't see a lot of those shows out there, though it did get very, it got a lot more popular after Breaking Bad, that's for sure, where we see that actually, a lot more commonly now. But at the time, I think that was a pretty original kind of take, and kind of speaks to the fact that no other network really wanted to touch this thing except for AMC because they were so worried about that element of it, right? And of course, I guess just the kind of pilot as a whole, even like I said, this hook, the introduction of the characters, the atmosphere, just all those things playing into it also made it kind of unique because of how just damn good it is, right? And kind of made it stand out in that way, in terms of kind of the quality, right, of this pilot. Other than that, I mean, maybe you could say, a show in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, maybe that kind of makes it a little more unique as well. But yeah, just overall, this kind of criteria is a little harder to pinpoint exactly with this show, because other shows, something that I'm really considering as well for a show like The Shield, which I'm also planning to take a look at. That's kind of a good example of the uniqueness because that is, a unique take on the cop drama kind of show. But this show is so unique just in itself that it's hard to compare to other shows. Like I said, I guess it is the crime genre, but even comparing it to other crime shows, it's so different than that. So I guess in that way, yeah, I mean, full points for being unique because it's just so hard to compare to anything else. But obviously, in terms of the style of the show, I think even that would be unique as well. Even in some of the shots you see in this episode, and especially as the rest of the series goes on, just the style of the filmmaking, the writing, even the acting is very unique as well. Nothing has ever, I don't think, come close except for Better Call Saul. From the same team of writers and directors and creatives. So, in that way, that kind of stands out as well in terms of the style. So, full points for uniqueness and originality, but I do think this criteria will lend itself better to some other shows in the future. Anyways, so that'll just about do it then for all of the kind of criteria and the discussion here of this pilot. So finally, I'll end off with a rating for this one and just kind of, maybe my kind of overall thoughts summarized here. So I'm going to give this one out of 10. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. The only reason that and it probably could be 9.5, right? I don't know. I didn't want to go too high and then, nothing even come close to it as we go through the series of reviews. But I'll stick to a 9 for this one. But The only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 to me, which it is, very much close to that, is, rewatching this pilot again, it is a pretty fast-paced or pretty kind of fast-tracked development for this character of Walter White. And that'd be kind of my only kind of nitpick here, is that it really does seem like Vince Gilligan is had to kind of show, his home life, where he starts, and then got to the point where he's cooking meth, right? But as the rest of the show goes on, it's so beautifully done in this, long arc of, again, Mr. Chips to Scarface. But even in this episode, it does seem like a little fast to me on rewatch now. And I didn't feel this before when I watched it, but I don't know. For some reason, this time when I watched it, it really did stick out to me. It's like, okay, I mean, this is a little bit of a fast development. Just within 1 hour, we see this character, go to this, really far length from, being this average high school teacher to now cooking meth out in the desert and killing people in this RV. It's just such a chaotic sequence there. That it I don't know, it does feel like it's kind of a huge development, though I will say it all kind of still makes sense though. And that's what's so impressive about this is, yeah, it's kind of a big jump, maybe kind of a ridiculously big jump, I think you could say, from the beginning to the end of this episode. But it makes sense. I mean, this guy is, diagnosed with terminal cancer, and the decisions he makes in this episode, of course, he doesn't decide to kill those two people. They ambush them, right? Emilio and Crazy 8, they ambush them and kind of put Walter in that position, and it almost is this self-defense. So anyways, everything makes sense. I'm not saying that, this is kind of forced or doesn't, add up or anything like that. It does make sense. It's just, visually within an hour, just such a big jump to take. Whereas I think even the rest of the season, how it plays out, they do kind of dial it back and kind of take it back and, kind of let us kind of, come back to a little bit more of kind of the reality or more the grounded bit of this character, Walter White. Whereas we don't see something intense or this chaotic really until Tuco, I believe in the season 1 finale or maybe the beginning of season 2 there with that big dramatic scene. I think, yeah, maybe that is the end of season 1. But anyways, or maybe middle of season 2. It's been a while, but anyways, so yeah, that would be like my only nitpick really with this pilot episode, and that's the only reason it is not a full 10 out of 10. But anyways, that'll just about do it for all my thoughts on the pilot of Breaking Bad. Really enjoyed, going back and watching this episode again. Lots of this just gave me chills, to be honest. Revisiting this and even seeing the intro play and all the stuff that goes along with this show. So impressive. And yeah, really enjoyed taking a look at this one, and really looking forward to looking at some other pilots here, especially of shows that I have not seen, and really diving into them. So anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts, as I said, on this pilot of Breaking Bad, or just Breaking Bad as a whole, of course. Love to discuss with you guys on anything you want to kind of go at or talk about here with this one. But anyways, that'll just about do it. So thank you guys so much for watching this one, and definitely stay tuned for the next Throwback pilot review. I haven't picked a show yet that I'm going to be doing, but as we go on, I'll kind of, put together kind of a list, and maybe I'll, let you guys know what the next episode is going to be, and all that. But anyways, once again, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this one, and we'll see you then in my next review.